lot of hair.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next of our 2024 GGK newbie buddy reads with two incredible gentlemen joining me on the channel. They are great friends of the channel. We have Zamar and Nico. Welcome, both of you. How y'all doing today?
Doing great, Ben. It's always good to be here, chatting with you, and now I got to meet Nico as well, so it's an extra pleasure.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a great Saturday.
Welcome, Heidi.
Oh, there's Heidi.
Nice.
I knew she would be here. She's been
Glad to
also
have
doing
you.
the new read, Guy Gavriel Kay, this year as well. So for a lot of it. So
yeah, this has been a fun time. It seems like Guy Gavriel Kay has really been rediscovered by the fantasy booktube sphere in the last couple of years, and beyond just Tigana, which the various people had read that I had seen earlier. But this has been a year of me discovering one of my new favorite authors for sure. And before we get into Sailing to Sarantium, I just want to mention we will discuss it in a non-spoilery way first. So if you have not read Sailing to Sarantium, feel free to stick around for a little while until we move to spoilers. But I did want to go around the horn a little bit and hear from maybe Zamar first. What did you think? This is your second GGK read after one that utterly blew you away with A Brightness Long Ago. So I'm curious, what did you overall make of Sailing to Sarantium, Volume 1 of the Sarantine Mosaic duology? So it is a little different, not a standalone.
Yep.
Trying to take that into account with this one.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, like you said, the first GGK book I read was A Brightness Long Ago. And I found Brightness was, I adored that book, but it was also very strange, to be honest. Like if you just go through it, there's so many experimental things in A Brightness Long Ago. There's like constant POV shifts. There's constant tense shifts. Like one chapter will be in first person present, and then you switch to a different character, and suddenly it's third person past tense, and like it's just constantly alternating between all these different writing styles, which to me, like, it gave A Brightness Long Ago this really magical air. Even the story and the plot in general just felt like it just had like this really I mean, mythical is the wrong word, but it had a sense of magic to it. I found Sailing to Sarantium, this just felt like a lot more of a standard fantasy story. Like, we're keeping the same tense. We're following this one guy who I thought was an awesome character. And like, just, pretty standard third person POV. I really liked it. I think I've mentioned this before to you guys. The first like 10-15%, I was so confused. I had no idea what was going on. It was like all chaos. The writing style was very convoluted. It was very hard to get into. But then after that, where we have like a billion different POVs, and I think he's like intentionally putting on a sense of chaos. But then we zero in and we start focusing on Crispin, who I thought as a POV was just so awesome because he's like this hot-headed guy who's got nothing left to lose at this point. And you don't see those kind of characters too often. And I really enjoyed his journey. I enjoyed seeing the people he met on his way once he got going, and then the things that happened once he got to where he was going. Yeah.
Well, I'm right with you. I had a very similar experience. I know I'm going to hand it off to Nico for his non-spoiler thoughts. And disagreement is healthy when it comes to experience of art. It's a wonderful thing that we can learn from each other's experiences and see things in new ways. And so, yeah, it's wonderful if we all don't have the same exact thoughts. Just want to lead off with that.
Well, I appreciate it, yeah. Because the spoiler, I was more so the dissenting opinion on this one, and I will say I did like this. I think part of it was my expectations were way too high because this is my third GGK novel. The first was Lions of Awasan, which is one of, if not my all-time favorite novels. After reading that, and then reading A Song for Arbonne, which was on a very similar level, although Lions still edged it out for me. So like started about as high as you can start, and then went to what I think was just an okay a book here, really. Writing style wise, I didn't have a huge issue with it. I feel like with this one though, I just didn't connect to the characters or the world as much as I did in either of those other books. I felt sometimes felt like it wasn't super focused and was kind of going off into some different directions, not fully exploring some things. Although I think it did do some interesting things that were a little bit different as well. The first two Guy Gavriel Kay books that I read were similar in a lot of ways, with some recurring themes, some recurring ways that things were done, and this one was quite different. Even though it does technically take place in the same world as Lions, it still felt quite different from a lot of that. So I think some of it was just a little bit of a different feel. The time period, I think, is something I was a little bit more familiar with, so it felt less new, for me, I think, for that reason. And then just, the characters I felt like were just a little bit lacking for me. Although I still thought it was solid. This is one of those books that if this was some other author that I'd not read before, I probably wouldn't have been like as harsh on it, just because I hold Guy Gavriel Kay in very high regard. But I did still enjoy this overall. So I didn't hate it by any means. I was a little disappointed overall.
Thanks for sharing, Nico. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, Jorge was in the thumbnail. He's unfortunately just experiencing some family stuff where he's got to take care of his wife and has not yet finished the book. So sorry you couldn't join us for this one, but hopefully for the next one with Lord of Emperors, we definitely want you aboard. So no worries about this one though. And amazing picture though for the thumbnail in that old-timey gear. Love that cloak. So yeah, no worries. That
was very Game of Thronesy to me.
Yeah, definitely. Heidi said, I got dizzy from the prologue, but settled right in when chapter 1. So yeah, I had same experience. I think it's pretty purposeful on GGK's part. The prologue just, you're plopped down in the middle of this very intense day or night in this Constantinople or Byzantium-like city, and you're just thrown around from POV to POV. You don't have time to get your bearings. It was very disorienting, and I still was game for it. I felt like I was getting a nice introduction to the Viper's Nest that is Sarantium, and a sense of the court politics that we were gonna come to later. And so when we finally did, of course, come back to Sarantium, I felt like we kind of knew a little bit what to expect, what Crispin was heading toward. So I don't know. I think the prologue was cool. Definitely, not the most engaging, immersive way to get into the book. But I'm with Heidi. Once chapter 1 hit, and we, like Samar said, are following more just like one character. For some, we do take some detours, which I love. I love Kay's POV detours into side characters, and that's one of my favorite things about all these books that I've read of his. And I was really into Crispin. Honestly, I felt really attached to him from an early time. I don't read too many characters who have faced, just like massive personal tragedy where they truly are like in a position of having nothing left to live for, and he's trudging away in this provincial area as an artist, and then gets called on a quest, and he's like, sure, why not? I'll do it. And some of the dramatic things that happened along the way, just I found those long sequences, these long chapters, to be just so engaging and like massive short stories. And I felt satisfied just like trying to read one of those and over the course of a day or two, and then just reading through the book very slowly, experiencing those legs of the journey. And those side characters, unlike for Nico, I think they really worked for me. Like they really came alive with brief time in their POV, and even ones that we didn't have POVs for. They all felt distinctive and interesting, and really distinctive dialogue, and lively dialogue too, and some raunchiness that was fun. I will say, Nico, like I before this read Song for Our Bone, which became like my favorite book of all time, and then Lions of Our which is amazing, Brandon's Long Go, which is amazing. Like these perfect single volumes which tell a complete story. And so like I knew going in that this volume 1 wasn't gonna match up to those because it's telling just half the story. So I tried to lower my expectations going in, and so I think that helped. And yeah, it didn't come close to living up to what the experience was like of any of those 3 books, but I think I was happy with kind of the setup that it did accomplish. And so yeah, I was around like 4.5 stars for this one, where I appreciated a lot of what it was doing, but I didn't fall completely in love with it yet. But yeah, I was overall happy with this volume 1, and pretty hyped for Lord of Emperors book 2. So that's where I fell. But yeah, I think very understandable though, your experience.
It definitely does feel like a setup book, to a degree at least. But at the same time, I appreciated that this one sort of largely covered that journey to Sarantium, like it's sailing to Sarantium, as it were, right? And I have to say, I thought I think this comes about from Crispin's character, but there were some amazing insults in this book, like when the characters are talking with each other, like some of the words that are thrown around, it's just so funny.
Yeah.
It was also so jarring coming from Kay. It was
yeah totally. But there were some very evocative poetic prose moments that Heidi's alluding to here, where we are in the POV of a master artist, and I thought Kay handled that. I don't know if he has any history in visual art. I don't, but I thought it was so believable that Crispin was a master mosaicist, and just when we're in his POV, he's always noticing light and color.
And colors, yeah.
And those embellishments in his internal monologues they really just hit the mark for me and helped me be immersed in his POV. And some of those were a little bit dense, and so like I was taking it slow in print, and that helped me imbibe this. I know Nico, you did it somewhat in audio, and I think that would have hurt my experience for sure if I had done this one in audio. Even if I liked the narrator, which I didn't think the narrator really caught the right vibe. So I just put that aside and did the whole thing in print. But this was cool because the other books, like Song for Our Bone, we get musicians, and so we don't get that visual art really. And then Lions, there's characters who are like poets, but they're also like artists and other things. They do art in their spare time, and so this was cool to be like the main character is a visual artist, and I think Kay made that really distinctive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely a theme I've noticed where we're focusing on something that has to do with art, and like the other one, which not quite art, but Lions, you get the poetry and then also medicine. There's always there's that focus, and those are always just some really big highlights for me of how it's handled. And I absolutely agree on the passages about art. And it's amazing how Kay is able to write a character that comes off as so pretentious, but yet feels so earned. When he's talking about art, it's like you don't feel like, gosh, you don't know what you're talking about. You have every right to be that pretentious about it because these people just don't understand. And I'm not an art person myself, so I don't understand. But the way the text, when the character is describing the art, it's just wow, you really feel it, and you really feel it from those descriptions. And those were some of my absolute favorite parts. Those were that's what I look for in a Kay novel, just those absolute beautiful passages that just so those were definitely some of my favorite parts all throughout. Thankfully there were a lot of them,
and you can tell that he's a legit mosaicist, this guy's not messing around.
I know nothing about mosaicism, but I feel like it feels so authentic and real at the same time. Not for a second do I feel does Guy Gavriel Kay really know what he's talking about? I'm no, he absolutely knows what he's talking about, because this character does. And so it really did make sense.
Oh, your mic went out. It's back. From the very beginning of chapter 1, though, I think Kay set this up so well by having chapter 1 start with the mosaicists are chatting about their current mosaic work they're finishing up, and the apprentices are mixing the cement or whatever it is that they stick the tiles to, and his attention to detail, how hard he is on the apprentices, but then still appreciating their good work. He did a great job, and then how he's discouraged at like the lack of quality from the local glass and colors, and how he wishes for the higher quality. Like from the very beginning, Kay just did such a great job establishing that he is a true virtuoso of an artist, and has the vision to make it, and the care for it and the details. So I just loved how he set that up from the very beginning.
Yeah, but in that scene, he also established that he's a real hothead and doesn't mind like swearing like crazy, and B, he's a perfectionist, right?
Absolutely. I feel like we're starting to get some momentum going through the book, so I probably want to go into spoiler territory now, and Shad has not read it, so yeah, if you want to go for any last non-spoiler thoughts, feel free, but I think we are going to start dissecting the book and going through spoilers. So if you have not read Sailing to Sarantium, now is the time to stop watching and come back when you have.
I think I might add, because I guess this is like one place where people might start reading GGK, and you guys might have differing opinions on whether they should start here or not. One thing I would say is, like, before I started, for instance, I thought that GGK would be really dense, hard to read, etc. And starting on A Brightness Long Ago, like, it wasn't dense or anything, but it was harder to read, I found, even though I ended up liking it more. Like, A Brightness Long Ago just took a lot more concentration for me to like keep track of everything that was going on. This book, I thought, might actually be a good place to start, because it just feels more familiar. It feels like it just kind of pulls you along, tugs you along, like you're in the story. And I just found it a lot easier to read, personally.
I have no idea what the right answer to that is, because I just I feel like I love where I started, but also I feel like I sort of regret it, because I don't know if anything's going to top, like, starting with something that becomes an all-time favorite is so hard, because like I'm so excited to read all of his stuff, but I also know that nothing might ever live up to the experience I had with that first one. So I will say I started spur of the moment. Somebody was reading it. I started The Wandering Fire last night, the first Fiona of our Tapestry book, and that was so incredibly jarring, because it's portal fantasy. So the opening setting is a university in Toronto, and it's just like normal, and I'm like, what is this? This is not Guy Gavriel Kay. It was so weird. I'm not very far in yet. I just the first chapter, but it was like it was just
I can't
so
wait.
different. So different.
It's exciting.
I can't wait to see Kay in a completely different writing mode.
It is very different, yeah.
But yeah, that's like, do you want to start with an author's like first books and work your way through their oeuvre and see them grow and develop, or how they choose to change their approach? Or do you want to start with some like weaker ones, but then you might not be so excited to continue on? Like Rogue said, he started with Tigana, but you know, he ended up liking other ones a lot more. So like, yeah, it's a tough question. The right answer is probably to start out with one that is you're gonna like and is gonna get you excited to continue, but is not like the greatest book for you of all time, like with me and Nico, where like nothing else is ever gonna measure up. So it's hard to say that which that's gonna become, like, because people seem to really love the first GGK book, like, you know, me with Song for a Bow, Lions for Brightness for Zamar, like, so who knows?
See, here's the thing, right? Like, the actual answer is you read the premise, and like whichever premise is most interesting, you go for that one. But the bootleg answer is you watch a bunch of booktube, you figure out which book most people have as their favorite. You don't read that one, and you never read that one, because you're gonna say like, oh, you know, at least there's a better book that I can always go to, and like you're always looking forward to reading the best GGK book. But you read the second best and the third best and the fourth best, and you read all of the other ones.
Yeah. And with an author that's good, with an author who's just so powerful with developing main characters, side characters, the passages of poetic prose that hit hard, little life lessons that he throws, like, I think I'm gonna get something out of any GGK book. So I can't wait to read the whole bibliography.
I'm excited.
I always think too. The channel The Library Ladder, he did a video about Guy Gavriel Kay and his whole bibliography, and his what he said was that Guy Gavriel Kay books range from the excellent to the merely very good. And so it's like
Yep.
you're gonna find I'm gonna have a good time with pretty much anything, I'm sure.
Yep.
So
I love that peer
So
ranking
one more
video.
non-spoiler question,
Yeah.
then, while we're here, who would you guys say this book is not for, and this author in general?
In general, Kay is definitely one of those authors that's not going to work for everybody if you aren't okay with things being a little bit slow. Because everything I've read from Kay, he's weaving a story, and it's not going to start off with a lot of stuff happening. Now, for me, I've always been engaged extremely early, and I have no problem with that. But if you're somebody who's looking for like a lot of action, you want things to be happening constantly, Kay is probably not an author for you, because it's much more focused on, arts or like, other things like that, different things other than action, even though there's usually some action in the books. This particular book, for people who don't like coarse language, is probably not the best one. But I think otherwise Kay is one of those authors that will work for a lot of people, but you have to be willing to read a book that's not immediately like just stuff happening. And like most of my favorites fall into that category, so that is not at all a negative for me. I love my slow burn books like that. So that's when people just like, if I see a negative review like, oh, it was so slow, it took a while to get going, I'm like, I'm more interested in this book now based on that complaint when I see that from people. So but that's my general thoughts on it.
It is one of those things where like you get books like this, I think you see this in Hob as well, where the plot is not that well defined from the get-go, right? Like you could read other books and it's like right from page one, you know exactly what the characters want to do and what they're going to do. And this is like one of those books where you're just following this guy and you're like, okay, I guess, like, where's he going? What's he going to do? What's going to happen? I have no idea. And like, if you're cool with that and you just enjoy spending time in a new world with some colorful characters, then you might enjoy it a lot. But if you need like a goalpost that everyone is going towards, you're probably not going to get it in this book or in Brightness from the two I've read.
Very well,
and just
well said.
to add to that, I think there is an added density to the prose with Kay that you just don't get with some of the more window pane style prose writers like Sanderson. I enjoy Sanderson books, but I think a lot of his readership just are purely there for just like zooming through a plot and growing attachments to characters, and not at all for the language, and don't want to be tripped up by denser language or just different kind of poetic rhythms maybe. So if you're not interested in that at all, I don't think this book and probably most of GGK's books are going to be for you, which is fine, which is totally fine. You do have to be wanting to appreciate more of the denser, slower style. But if you like Hob, I think it's a no-brainer to veer off towards GGK.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Hob's a great example of similar elements where it's going. But I mean, Hob, Word, Jordan, all they take a while to get where we're going type of authors. Although Jordan does have more of a goalpost, I suppose. But
and Heidi, we will get to spoilers soon, so we'll get there. I see you are very eager to talk about the second half. I typically like to just go linearly through the book, so bear with us, be patient, because we'll get there. But I do want to start our spoiler dissection. This is the part of these book chats that I just relish so much. It's one of the reasons I think I wanted to get on BookTube, is to have these sorts of chats, enrich my reads, like I used to do in some small college seminar classes. So we go through the prologue, all these things going on in Sarantium, and so spoilers here. What do we think of the actual events being portrayed, the characters? It was a lot to take in, but I thought in the end I got a sense for, wow, this young kid who is like murdering someone like having someone murdered outside as he's talking to his paramour. Like, he's pretty ruthless. Like, he's someone to be reckoned with. Like, I kind of came out of the prologue of like, wow, all this craziness happening, and like some really clever, like, ruthless young guy is taking over the throne here. So I don't know. That's what I kind of got out of the prologue.
Yeah, I mean, it gave the impression that the entire city was just boiling. Like, we had riots. I think one of the things that I instantly latched onto, like having read Brightness, was just the blues and the greens and the chariot races. I was like, okay, so there's factions like based around the local sport that everyone likes. Like, sure, that's fair. And then those guys, I think they were united during the prologue, if I understood it correctly, because it was like the first time ever that, they're in agreement and they're just unhappy about random stuff. And yeah, like the emperor had died and no one knew what was going to happen afterwards, and everyone thought it was going to be one guy that was going to ascend. But then what's his name, Valerius?
What is his original name? I don't even know in the prologue.
It was P something. Pet.
Yeah.
Petrusio. I think. Yeah. Anyway, he ended up being the clever, cunning guy who, behind the door sees power. So
yeah, putting his like warrior uncle in power to get himself in position to take over. So that was pretty crazy. I don't know if there's that much more to say about all that. I think it was pretty hard to get a sense for like the different court positions. There's a chancellor, there's different other important positions in this Sarantium government. But I think it did a pretty good job, I think, of establishing like the Viper's Nest that is the Sarantian court. So
funnily enough, because I know everybody was like, oh, it took me a bit to get past it. I was actually generally fine with the prologue, which is just funny because apparently I'm just very contrarian on this, going the other way. But, there was a lot going on, but also like I feel like from the other K books I've read, he just does kind of like to start in the thick of it and just kind of do stuff and have stuff happening. And so, but also it's like the historical time period that it's based on, it's being pretty similar as well. And I've read other things that are kind of set in this time period as well. And so that's where I'm just like, I immediately kind of see, like, I see exactly what you're doing. And, it's based on a real emperor, a real empress, like,
is it?
real historical figures.
I did not know that going in. I saw later that, I don't know how much of a spoiler it is, but I about Justinian and Justinian's empress.
I was blanking on the name, but yeah,
I've not studied that time period much, so I didn't know. Although I've heard the name, so I kind of have a sense that it was an important Byzantine emperor, or someone who ruled for a while, which I guess is a little bit of a spoiler, but
yeah, I've heard the name as well.
Anyway, it's okay. But yeah, so that was I and I'm not like crazy familiar because I'm not a historian, but like I read a series that was set in the same time period and featured that emperor, and also which is some of the other bits and pieces of it, like KJ Parker's Siege trilogy is in a similar setting. And so apparently a lot of people have noticed similarities with KJ Parker and Guy Gavriel Kay, which makes me even more excited to read more Parker with hearing that. But so, yeah, I think that was just, some of it was like, okay, I'm like, I was familiar enough to know what was going on there.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. I had a pretty good time with the prologue too. And you did as well. For Zamar, I think it took you more into chapter 1 to get into it. But let's talk about the beginning here. I think we did some good setup of this location, of this kind of like, they're living in this post-Roman Empire Italy type place, and I enjoyed this whole setup. We've already talked about like the mosaicists kind of getting set up in the beginning, and then we get an aside with the courier, the Tiliticus or something like that.
Well, I think we start with him, right? Which was like one of the
start in chapter 1 with him.
I think so. Yeah, because it was like,
that was wonderful. Like, I freaking love these short side character POVs from Kay. Like, he brought this character to such vivid life. Like, he's just this, womanizing, like, selfish, like, self-centered, just like like
With like the
courier.
weirdest name, Teledicus.
Yeah, and we see like that he just took way too long to get there, which ends up like coming back to bite him much later in the book. And I love that Kay didn't just drop that, and that that there was a real consequence for him not performing his duty here. But like that was wonderful. I loved that, and then I enjoyed seeing like the scene of like Martinian pretending to not be himself, and Crispin kind of like just being shocked into this situation, and I think Kay did a good job in this section of doing his like little asides about like little decisions change everything. Like I love those little asides that Kay brings from an omniscient kind of point of view.
Yeah.
And then we're off to the races, and then Crispin's like, I'm doing this. Let me go to the sorcerer's, like the alchemist's house. And I loved this scene too. Like he meets the birds, and you don't know what's going on. He gets handed one of them. Like this was craziness. This was more high fantasy too than I was expecting, because the fantasy elements were so subdued in the previous books. So what did you think of meeting Zodicus and the mechanical birds and all of this wonderful fantastical stuff in the beginning?
It was very unexpected for me, which I thought was interesting though, just because the other two I read, like Lions technically has some fantastical elements, but they're a very small part, and then Song for Our Bone almost doesn't have anything really. Like there's a little, but I mean, so having actual fantasy elements I thought was interesting. I did really like the character of Zodicus. I would have liked, especially with the ending, which I won't talk about, but with the ending, I would have liked to spend more time with him throughout personally. But having like the character of the talking bird and everything with it, and then just the kind of the mysticism of that's the scenes in the forest. I really liked that passage there as well, just the way that it was described and the way that it remains relevant, like that memory being very important as we go along. I quite enjoyed.
Yeah, I was not expecting fantasy elements to the point where I was trying to figure out if there's like some kind of trick, like is he a puppeteer? Like are these because I think like they were described as like mechanical birds or something.
Yeah, they're mechanical. Right? They're made of metal, and they all have the same like man like upper crust like male voice to them. So it's like there's a real mystery on what's going on with this.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, this Zodicus guy, he's a puppeteer, and he's like doing something, playing with these birds and making them come to life and fooling our boy. But no, then it just like as you spend more time with Lennon and that whole thing, then you're like, oh wait, actually there is some fantasy elements here, and it was quite interesting. I loved Crispin's introduction scene, like that whole sequence where they're just trying to set up their mosaic, and this random courier shows up, and he's like, I demand to speak to Martinian. Yeah, and Martinian's like, oh, he's up there. I just thought the whole thing was so funny. And then Crispin like gets dragged into this, and he just goes along with it, He's like, are you Martinian? And he just doesn't say anything. Yeah,
I thought we got some pretty elegant character backstory with Crispin. Like, I don't think it was clunky, kind of how we learned through his POV of like, the plague tragedy, him losing his wife and daughters. Like, we got little drips of that kind of throughout the book, and how intense of a loss that was for him. And so I really like how he introduced Crispin too, and kind of set up his backstory and who he is now. And so that was all working really great for me too.
I agree.
We have McScarfield. Welcome. And
GGK Pro.
We head off on the journey. And first of all, like Linen, I was in love with Linen. Like wonderful, colorful, like back and forth. I liked that the tension of just like that he could turn off Linen kind of at will, but he was growing attached to Linen. Like even though it was so annoying to him, like he was kind of growing attached. You could tell the subtlety and nuance there.
Yeah.
with the way Crispin was relating to Linen. I was all about this companionship, by the way, and so losing Linen so early into the book like was a real blow. Like I was pretty attached to that character. So like we'll get to that, I guess, in a bit. But the scene, I love that he picked up, this bodyguard, and Kay turned just like what could be just like a throwaway cardboard like type of character archetype, like a gruff bodyguard, into such a three-dimensional character. When we get his POV, we get into his backstory, and how he left home and took on this new faith and is serious about it, and like I don't know, I came pretty attached to Vargos, and so they're traveling along, and they come at this inn, and like I don't remember now because it's been a couple weeks since I read it, but like how Kasia got set up. Is that her name? What's the
Kasia?
The girl's name.
Kasia.
Like,
Kasia.
I think we got her POV before they ever arrived at the inn, right?
Pretty
Where
briefly,
she was.
yeah.
So we kind of got a sense for, she's in danger maybe because of this rites that are going to be happening, and like the whole sequence that took place at the inn, just like I was gripped. I couldn't just stop reading, and once like Crispin learns about like what's going to happen to Kasia and decides to save her, and then how he goes about it, and man, I ate up this sequence, and it was intense and interesting, and played out in a way that was surprising. Like I didn't know how he was going to pull it off, and then he figured out how to frame that guy for thievery, and caught him
it was just some rando. But then we got his POV too, right? For like a short chapter where it kind of explains his motivations behind stealing stuff.
like he's in debt. He's kind of got nothing to live for. So like Kay humanized him. That could have been another just complete throwaway archetype of a character. I love that. That's the stuff that elevates these reads for me, just like to another level than the usual stuff.
This is where I get so torn, because I also do like that, and it's something like Robert Jordan, Wheel of Time. There are so many one-off POVs. I love it. It adds to the world for me. It does it, and so I still liked that here, but I ran into the issue where Kasia and like the bodyguard, they felt like they were supposed to be a bit more, and yet they were treated almost as throwaway side characters. I felt like we didn't spend enough time with them, and we just kind of, especially in the second half, we just kind of forget they exist for the most part, and then randomly they'll get brought up again here and there. But so that was the first kind of thing where I'm like, okay, we're doing a really good job establishing these side characters, but then it just felt like we just kind of drop them and just pick them up whenever. It didn't feel like they were a consistent part of the story for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like I noticed that as well, but then I kind of just chalked it up to this is book one of a duology, so I don't know. Like I feel like maybe we're just setting them up for book two. Like it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure.
It is hard to know. Yeah. Most of my complaints could be resolved in book two, so I'll just have to see if they are.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. They definitely got dropped for large portions of the second half, and I could see that being a weakness. Although viewed from another way, which is I think how I was viewing it, which is where like Crispin is by far like the central character here, and so like I view those other POVs as like side ones or one-offs that bring to life what would otherwise be much less deep side characters. So I wasn't necessarily looking for them to become main characters or secondary kind of to Crispin, but I could totally see that being a valid complaint about this. I think just happy to get any POV from Vargos, and then I just became so attached to him, from the little bits we got, or even Linen, who didn't have a POV. Like I grew attached to Linen. Like Kay makes me so attached to these characters with so little page time.
He does do that. I think like he does a lot of not exactly one off, but just a little bit of time with these side characters. Where I think with a lot of other authors, this book would have been written with a single POV, and you would have been just following Crispin and tried to develop a side character through his point of view. but Kay isn't afraid to like go a little bit omniscient, like step back and like even when you're in Crispin's POV, occasionally you'll just get like random sentences or paragraphs which are like definitely omniscient God K, just throwing that in there just to give you some food for thought. And then he'll just drop you into another POV for like, I don't know, a page. It's like, here, just have a little bit of info. Like later on, we got Teleticus's life story. That was so random, but I loved it.
That's a good scene.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it looks like Mac was also a fan of the Vargas POV. But this scene was so tense, like how Crispin figured out how to get Kasia away from the inn, and like even the little side character of like the guy that was like the head of the group that the thief was a part of was an honorable guy, and felt really bad about what his nephew or whoever it was what he had done, and just that was a really intense sequence. And then we got multiple warnings prior about like, don't go out on like this Day of the Dead or whatever it is, stay in, and now they're headed off out into the mist of the morning on this day where no one's supposed to be out, and like the dread and the tension involved here, like, are the townsfolk gonna come after them? What supernatural things? Like this whole section was, I know, Nikki, you mentioned the part about going to Liz, but even before then, I thought this was just incredible stuff. And you know, the tension of, are they getting away? What's going to happen? Them getting caught up by the townsfolk with the dogs, with the hounds, and then this pagan deity appears, and the weight of this was just so intense and unexpected. Honestly, I was not expecting that at all.
Did you?
It was. Oh, go ahead.
Were you guys like 100% convinced that it's like a deity, or did you think, like, at least for me, I was like, maybe it's just an ordinary bison that got angry at people? Like, I wasn't 100% sure.
I love the distrust.
I thought it was a supernatural element, like the whole time, and yeah, I found it interesting. Like, wow, like Kay is bringing to life, like, and he did a little bit of it in like Brightness Long Ago, where like, you know, some of the non-standard religious beliefs actually, you know, might have something to them in this alternate reality, and so it's not just like, you know, the Christianity or you know, version that might have some legitimacy. But yeah, this was so intense. I did not know what this bison was going to do. It was like really like full horror vibes. Yeah, like with all like the stuff crawling on the bison. It was like huge and intense. The characters are just like in shock and trying to take this in. And also what it does to the characters who do believe in Jad, and like Crispin and Vargos, like it's shaking their like religious beliefs and understanding. So like this was amazing. And then I was like, run. He's not killing you. Like, run away. What are we doing? Why are we following this bison into the scary woods? Like, where it's going to do God knows what to you. But it's like they're almost like in a trance, and they're following it. And they get to the clearing, and like Linen tells him what he has to do. And like this whole sequence, once again, just top tier stuff. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time.
The parts you were talking about, like before we even get to the mysticism, which is the tension of like feeling like any random people could, you know, come attack them.
Yeah.
The thing it actually reminded me of, if you've seen the movie Hotel Rwanda,
No.
Well, and I mean that one's based on a real thing, but it's, you know, a country where just the general populace was, you know, rising against a group and genocide and that kind of thing. But there's a scene where the people like go out and there's just all of these people here, and you're like, are they going to come at it? And it like, so it was, the tension was really, really good. It's a good movie too, very sad, but good movie. But the tension, that's what it kind of reminded me of there. And then with just the mysticism, I thought was so interesting, and especially because the other two K books I read have been much more focused on, like, you know, Christianity has been a big one with the ones I read too, and kind of some different looks there. So having the more the pagan religion and that in there, I absolutely love the exploration of religion in fantasy. It is something that I really enjoy in my books, actually. So that kind of different look, especially with the characters that have such strong beliefs about their own religions and kind of the differings there, the bits where it's talked about with some of the mosaics as well, and like what's okay and what's not, and the different interpretations of the god and everything. So those are things that I quite enjoyed.
Oh, and Max talking about maybe GGK being inspired by cave paintings of Neolithic people doing big bison paintings. Love that little tidbit from Mac.
That makes a lot of sense. That's
He's
fascinating.
a treasure trove. Max treasure trove of lore.
That's really interesting. And I mean, it ties in with like history really well, right? Like when you had Christianity spreading across Europe, you definitely had like remnants of these pagan religions as well. And I can imagine like out in the boonies, there were people who still practice things, and yeah.
And at first you're thinking like it's so barbaric that the people in this place are still practicing like these human sacrifices, and I just have no sympathy at all for them and feel like 100% like worried for Cassia. But like the fact that the bison is real and like takes these sacrifices, like I don't know, that recontextualizes everything that's going on there in this region, and like like maybe these people's practices aren't just completely and utterly inhumane and barbaric, and I don't know, that was interesting. But Nico, what you were talking about too, like within the Jadian faith, there's this schism, and the ones who don't want to worship Helaticos, the chariot driver of the sun, the ones who like that really is reflective of a lot of real world schisms that happen inside single religions.
And
it
feels very real. So with the bison, if my understanding is correct, like on the Day of the Dead, someone had to be given to that god, right? Like someone had to be killed. And years ago, it was meant to be these women, but then Zodicus saved them, or he saved their souls and put them into the birds, right?
I think he was just taking advantage of moments of like the sacrifice is happening. I'm gonna go steal away the soul before it goes away. And
that's what's so interesting. Did he really save them? Because that was that whole bit where like he stole them away, but
right,
like, in a way they're living on, but it's also like it's so much more complicated than that, which was what added to make it such an interesting passage.
Yeah.
And Linen seemingly like accepting going back or being getting the full process completed for her, and or maybe wanting it and that feeling right. I don't know, that it is a very complex thing. I hope we get more of that explored in the next book. But it was very interesting here.
Yeah, so then there's no so like the bison god, from what I understand, like to appease him, like they gave him Linen back because she technically belonged to him already. But then I think there's no mark on Cassia now, right? Like she never belonged to the god because I guess she wasn't sacrificed.
Yeah, I think Linen took her place.
Guy.
What's that?
But with the other random guy gets like disemboweled and killed.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Yeah, the bison took that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The bison took
the guy. Yeah.
And it's something too, which, and see, you can see here, even though I'm the one that like this book disappointed me, I'm so excited talking about so many things, which tells you it's still a good book. But so normally when you have this type of thing, when you have, it's this village, and it's explained that they used to sacrifice their own, but then they realized, hey, we can just, buy slaves and then use them as the sacrifice and get more use out of them and that thing. And it's this horrible thing. Cassia is asking to be saved. Our character is coming in being heroic and saving her from this terrible thing. And normally you're like, yeah, this is all just crap. They're just superstitious and they want to sacrifice. Like, no, it demands a sacrifice. It's real. And so like, it's such a bold and interesting choice to do that, because it's like, okay, what they're doing is still obviously like, morally wrong, but also like there really is this type of, you know, spirit or deity or whatever you want to call it that does demand a sacrifice and will take one way or another. And
Yeah.
so it's just like, it's so interesting because then it gets into that philosophy, and it's, the questions aren't really answered that much. They're brought up and for you to explore, but it's just, yeah, I don't know, doing that, and the way he just gets you thinking and has that such a powerful moment that you just keep thinking about through the rest of the story is just really, really great.
Yeah, and it
Yep.
puts in a
And
lot of
yeah.
inner conflict. Like that bison shows up in Crispin's final version of the mosaic, right? And like it left an impact on the guy.
Man, and just the
Great.
line-in was so touching in this whole section. Like, "Do it, my dear." This was written long ago, it seems. And "Think, my dear, how else would I have known the rights? There's no time, Crispin." Like it was so touching. Like he's like, "And you? Do I save her and leave you behind?" And she's like, "Yes, I'll sacrifice. Do not pity me." What did she say right at the end? Was there something right at the end?
I don't remember.
Okay. Crispin thought, "Goodbye, I will remember." Man, like that hit hard. Lynan did say something. Last words. "Go quickly now. Take them and go. Remember me." Like, and then Crispin thinks later, "I will remember." Like that hit so hard for like an early portion of a book.
Yeah.
Man, I was pretty upset at that part in a good, satisfying way though.
You just gotten to know and like Lynan, and then she's gone. So that was sad.
Yeah,
For sure.
one of these other early
keep
scenes on
wanting
the
to
journey.
talk about
Oh yeah.
No, it was
the what?
the very end, which we should probably wait, but it relates to this.
Yeah.
So
Keep it in mind. One of my favorite scenes also happened during the journey, where they stumble into this chapel, and Crispin does not expect to see like this famous mosaic on the ceiling, and he's just shocked, and he's lying on the ground, and he's stunned. He's never seen his god Jad portrayed in this like darker kind of way, where it's like more glamorous back in where he used to portray Jad back in Batiara, and so like that was an amazing scene that really, I think, did a lot to like help me understand Crispin as an artist and his religious beliefs and kind of like how the two intertwine. That was a really cool scene. I really loved that.
Yeah, his like physical reaction to it, I thought was great, and just that was the first, I feel like, really deep dive art scene that I really, really like, because there's that one and there's one a good deal later too, and it's just those are especially coming so soon after. I really did like the mysticism bits we talked about with the bison, and then so soon after having that was just also, that's where I feel like was one of the passages where you really start to see Crispin, like what he cares about, what he's passionate about is really, really there. Like you had the bits at the beginning where, you know, you see like, oh, this is the kind of person he is, but that like really is just like the art part of it really starts to shine through there for me.
Yeah, and it was so interesting the way it was written. At first I thought he'd been attacked, because it's like he walked in and then he fell down, and I was like, what, did someone attack him? But then oh no, he's actually just staring at the ceiling, and the priest is like, are you okay?
And then
he likes
was
to
like,
write things very ambiguously sometimes, like that on purpose, for sure.
And then he was absolutely just like schooling the priest about like how this would need to be repaired.
Yeah.
So because it's falling down, and like he was being like,
because the priest got cocky, right? The priest was like, look, our mosaic is like the best mosaic of all time. And Crispin's like, actually, I see some problems with it.
And it's again, he's such a pretentious, cocky character, but it feels earned, because I mean, he's literally coming like, well, actually, like this, that, and the other thing, and like it should be annoying. And him talking about the details of actually doing the mosaic should be boring, but it's not. It's like, it's beautiful. And that's the power of Kay in scenes like that, where it's just so engaging, despite if you describing that on paper, it sounds like it would be the worst thing to read. Like, oh yeah, this guy walks in and is just like literally falls over because he's looking at this, mosaic, and then he's discussing the ins and outs of the actual restoration process of mosaic. Like, that doesn't sound good. I mean,
it does
it
not.
works.
Do you think this was like Crispin is Kay embodying himself as an artist, where like he sees other people trying to write books like me, and he wishes he could just go up to them and be like, "You're an idiot. Like, why are you writing like this? This sucks. Like, you're so dumb." And like Crispin is just that, right? Like, he's just the complete master who's able to like put everyone in their spot, and he doesn't give a crap.
I didn't think about that, but that is a fun thing to think about. It's like with each of the books I've read have really focused on one area or another, and so I don't think necessarily that like he actually is focused on those areas, but I bet he did have a lot of fun writing this character, though, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Because yeah, like right after that, like right after Crispin's on the ground, we have the fifth Saradian, was it fifth? Like this platoon of soldiers shows up, and then the next thing we know, Crispin gets knocked out, and we found out later that he insulted their leader and got a helmet to the head.
Yeah. Oh, I loved that we saw like what actually happens there a bit later, and he kind of deserved it. And then the two of them are like verbally jousting, and they both grudgingly come to respect the other. Like, love that last little bit of the journey where he's kind of bonding with the soldier character, who I forget the name.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember his name as well.
I'm so bad with names, guys. You can't leave it up to me.
He was a relatively important character too, so it feels like a failure.
Carolus.
Carolus, yeah.
Carolus.
Carolus.
Okay. Yeah.
A very Roman name. Yeah. So that was fun. I liked that, brought a little lightness to the kind of end of the journey, and like even a more like tender scene. Like I did not really want Crispin to kind of take advantage, maybe like sexually, of Kasia in that vulnerable situation, and I still don't think he should have done that. But like the way Kay handled that, it was an elegantly done scene. I thought it made sense kind of for the characters, and so I didn't come out of that thinking better of Crispin, but I don't think we were supposed to. So
see, that scene felt like that could have been done differently, because it's being used as sort of like a character development moment where it shows he's tortured, but then he just like does anyway. And then when shortly after that, it feels like we just dropped that female character, added to reasons I didn't really like the treatment there. And it's not a K thing normally, and maybe it's partially just the character, because even with the fact that he's like, in his head, he's always planning to set her free. Like, he doesn't talk to her like that. She very much thinks that she's still a slave, and like all this is going to happen, and he does not disabuse her of those notions. So some of it could just be the character. But I mean, even in, Arbonne, where there's like a specific kingdom that they treat women like absolute dirt, like it still never felt like we were having a disposable character like that, which I did feel like Kasia kind of felt like a disposable character with some of the treatment. And so that scene made it a little bit worse for me, where I'm just like, we could have just not done this. I get the reason why, but especially then we're going to be like, now we've done this, and now we're going to spend way less time with the character, and we don't care about her anymore. I didn't like the way that came off personally.
I do want to challenge you a bit on that, because I think that is a lot of because of the POV of and who Crispin is as a character, and the society, and how these women are treated, and like the women slaves, or just like the barmaids in these inns, are just treated completely as objects, and to be abused, and to not thought of as fully human people that deserve their own autonomy in life. And so I think it was well done and organic to like the situation and the character of Crispin, that he wasn't overly concerned with Kasia a lot, and that he would kind of take advantage of her in a vulnerable moment, and think that was okay, and that even Kasia had kind of been conditioned to think that was just kind of like a normal thing that was expected. So and the fact that she's sidelined, like it makes sense, I think, for the way the plot goes, and I think is also just emblematic of like yeah, like Crispin is not taking good care of her and could be doing more, like to assure her of, you know, getting her new free life started well, and so like I think I feel when I'm reflecting back on it that it was fairly intentional in how Kasha was sidelined or and treated poorly by Crispin, and is more of a function of it being organic to the character and norms of like the cultures involved. And I think it interesting by sidelining her, it's like proving the kind of point of how these types of female characters, these slaves or common female characters are just completely objectified in this society or by Crispin. But I'd be curious to hear Samar's take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you, Ben. Like Kasha getting sidelined made perfect sense to me. Like it's not like I wanted that to happen or anything, but like when he gets to the city, like he gets entangled into the court politics and stuff, and like within this world, I think it's almost a commentary as well that she's just stuck in the inn, and it's kind of scary for her because she's alone. She's like looking out the window and seeing what's happening, and she doesn't really know what to do. She's like tasting a little bit of the freedom that she has now, but she doesn't quite like she hasn't internalized that freedom, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's interesting. Like the actual scene during the journey, I was a little bit conflicted about it. Like I thought this is, you know, a little bit iffy. Like there's maybe some taking advantage of, but I think what Ben said makes sense. Like within the context of the world, I thought it was appropriate. It was written sensitively, I think, and there was something there about two very hurt people coming together.
Yeah,
right? And like finding comfort in each other.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And there wasn't a sense even that like it was just two people finding comfort in that moment, and then like Crispin wasn't going to continue. Wasn't like after that he wasn't continuing to take advantage of her in that way, and you know, maybe there's this budding romance between Kasha and Carolus where they're actually a better kind of real pair and match for each other. But then we still do return to Kasha. So like she doesn't get complete silent because we like while they're gallivanting about with the chariot races and everything, and going to the court, like she's stuck in that room, and we do go back to her at that room, and it is really tense. Like I felt frightened for her. Like she's like locking herself up in this inn, like
the old mosaicist shows up,
like,
and then
that scary mosaicist comes by, and I'm like, don't open the door. Like, what are you doing? Like, keep the door locked. And so like she's not completely sidelined in the narrative, and she doesn't have a lot to do during like the course of this one day that basically like the second half covers. And so like I think part of it is just like the structure of the way that Kay did, like the whole second half of the book is like a day and a half or whatever it is.
I think like overall I'm just very curious because like I actually really like the second half of this book personally. Like I love the court politics. I thought the emperor and empress were like probably, I mean, Crispin's my favorite character, but like they were right up there. They were such great characters. But I'm very curious about the whole Kasha situation and what's going to happen in book 2. Like I feel like we set something up there, but I have no idea what it is yet.
Yeah, and that's where book 2 could definitely resolve some of my complaints with the characters feeling like that and everything too. And I feel like the scene at the time too, I will know, it's not like I immediately like found it objectionable. I definitely got what it was going for at the time, but as we kept going, it's what happened later that did that too. And like the fact that Crispin is just like the absolute chick magnet, and like every single woman is just so immediately interested and attracted to him. Also, I feel like colored in retrospect how I looked at that, because it just starts making it feel wish fulfillment-y. And that's what made that earlier scene just feel less good to me, I guess.
Interesting. I didn't actually personally get that impression.
Neither did I. Yeah. I got the sense that a lot of the court, like the Empress, the Elena women, like that they're interested in him purely for what he represents as like a new power player in the court to shake things up.
Yeah, I thought it was like intentional, them like flexing their power, maybe doing a bit of seduction stuff on their own.
Well, like you get some of that too, but like and I'm so bad with names, but in the hotel room too, she's doing like, this isn't even about power. I just, whoever I want, I go, and it's this whole thing, and it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, no,
That's
he
how it
probably took
came off
that.
to
He
me.
probably took that scene a little too far. When the Delena woman was there, but also great callback to the prologue where like we saw like her relative, like older relative, like is the one that might have become the emperor and killed by Petrus, and so we know that like she's kind of has this kind of simmering rivalry with the emperor
And the Empress. Yeah.
What ticks me off the most about that scene though is the dialogue is excellent. Like it's I don't like
the
the
verbal
things that
jesting,
happened in the scene, but it's also it's so well written. I just wish it would have not happened the way that it did. So it's like
you're talking about the scene where she shows up at Crispin's hotel room, right?
Yeah.
Specifically?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the end.
Yeah. See, like, okay, this when I read that, even despite what she was saying, I was like, yeah, she's trying to get something from you. Like this like rich lady who's married to like the greatest
general,
the general of the sea. Like she's not interested in this mosaicist. I don't think it matters how hot he is or whatever, right? Like she's got bigger ambitions. So she's trying to get something here. And I was just trying to figure out like what does she want? Like what does she want with my boy? Like what's she so
and Kate. Yeah, you're right, Nico. The writing of the dialogue in this whole section where like every word choice that people say out loud like is important and has all these like implications, and Crispin has to make all these inferences based on being an outsider here, and we the reader are also outsiders, and so like, man, everything in this whole section was so precise, and like the dialogue was crackling with cleverness and implication, and Kay is just like a master of that, where he's not just like really clearly communicating to the reader like everything that's going on. Like we have to figure it out along with the characters, and it forces you to use your brain more than just I would be in like a Sanderson book, and
there's a lot of subtext. That's
the subtext.
That's what I love about it. Like it's very rich in subtext. But I think we skipped over the chariot race, guys.
We did because we're getting to like the court stuff, which happened at night. Like first of all, this storytelling trope of like spending a lot of time over the course of like one day at night, I go crazy for. I loved this, and I loved that we just like settle in, and because like hundreds of pages are happening over the course of a day, like we spend so much time in each scene and let it really play out and like see it like second by second, like and there's so few time skips, and we're just like living this crazy day in the life of Crispin, where he's spending his first day in this city of cities, and what better start than to go to the hippodrome for the chariot races. So I know we experienced something somewhat similar with the horse race in Brightness long ago.
Yeah,
and why not? If Kay is amazing at doing this type of scene, like I give it to me in every book. Like I'll take it. I loved it.
Yeah,
he does tend to do repeat certain things like that where it's not exactly the same, but I've noticed that where there's very often similar things that you'll get, like these little things that are like, oh, this is just a K-ism. So I feel like the more I read, the more I'll notice. But yeah,
I mean it it just seemed like this like it made sense because it's such a central part of the city's culture and identity is like these chariot races. Like it seems like
greens,
like everyone in the city is all about it, and it's like there's money on the table, there's like literal life and death loyalties, as we later find out that they're like the people who broke into the Blues compound. There's like these chariot races are serious business, and it's everything. And then like the way he wrote that race, I just thought it was so well written because you could visualize every single thing happening from like multiple perspectives, and it was absolute chaos. But despite that, like it was just clear, like you knew exactly what was happening. You knew exactly how the guy, was it Soticus? I don't remember his name. How the guy won. Like, yeah, it was so good.
I pulled that name up too.
Scortius.
Scortius. Yeah.
The decision to start from a new side character POV, where he's like one of the minor racers from like the white team or the red, whatever he was. Like seeing it through his eyes first was so awesome, and like I understood like the setup so well of like how these factions race and how they team up and the strategy and the lore we get about like the history of these and like the blues and the greens and Scortius like changing sides and being this like absolute like veteran.
And we knew about him from the prologue as well, right? Like he was a newbie when in the prologue, and now we see him again, and he's like the master champion.
Good catch.
Because I think that the racer in the prologue was like, that Scortius guy, man, I gotta watch out for him. He's gonna.
Oh, nice.
He's gonna come after me.
I don't remember that. Great catch. That's a great catch.
It was a small part, but he's like, I could get 100 wins by this time and be the greatest ever. Like I could do it, I think. And even though, so it did. The prologue took until the back half to really come back, and then came back big time. And that's where too. I expect that a lot of the stuff that was set up here, even though I do personally think this book stands on its own pretty well. The ending you could end there, and I think it works.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also, I think it is setting up a lot for book 2.
I was surprised actually how well I thought this does stand alone. I kind of what I'd heard from it. I tried to stay away from really like any spoiler chat or any reviews. But I just knowing it's book 1 of a duology, like I thought going in that maybe it was just that Kay wrote one big story and just had to chop it in half because it was too big. And so I was kind of expecting it to just like not be able to stand alone at all.
Yeah.
And so I was pleasantly surprised that I was able to put it down and not immediately feel like I had to go into book 2 and feeling like I could sit with it and it was satisfying.
I think it really is just like Kassia's story and Vargos and like those characters where you're kind of like, they just kind of dropped off the face of the earth and you don't know what happened there. So like that's the part of it where I'm like, okay, I want to read book 2. But yeah, on its own, like it definitely did stand alone. But at the same time, it set up a lot of things, right? So,
how about the chariot race? Oh, sorry, Nika, go for it.
Oh no, go ahead. The chariot race is in more.
I love that the chariot race wasn't just like an action scene that was like, all right, we finished that, we're moving on. It came back around in front of the Emperor when he's challenging people to say like, how did Scortius know he could win that way?
Yeah.
And then like everyone's going around and Mac brought it up here using his knowledge of light to see Scortius's strategy. Like, yeah, amazing moment that like Crispin, came through with that answer and then wins the jewel and then immediately gifts it away. I'm like, no, don't do that. But great stuff. I love that, that came back around. Scortius ended up being a pretty big side character and after that, but just the race itself, full of drama, no clue how it was going to play out. Like people are dying. Like I love little details, like they put in the seahorses into the bowl of water to show each lap, and like that had changed from dolphins because dolphins are associated with Helaticos. Like amazing detail, amazing. Other things like the crews that come to clean off the crashed chariots, like all these little details made it so immersive and just fantastic. Yeah, loved the chariot scene and the different POVs we got, and then we see it kind of from the audience POV too, and then it's like they're going to the bar to be rowdy and celebrate with everyone, and just getting a sense for like the factions and how the commoners view things. Like I don't know, everything around this I thought was really immersive and put me right into Byzantium and the 700s or whenever this is taking place. So
it did a great job of like giving the vibes of the city, I think.
And a very like I'm a sports fan, and so like it was fun to see just like this kind of like sports fandom just like portrayed as far as like factions for chariot racers. Like it's something I've not watched many racing sports, and so like Kay doing a horse race or a chariot race, like it's something that's very new and fresh, but a fun take on like sports fandom, and so in ways I could identify with it and feel like close to it, but be fresh too. So yeah, everything around that huge hit for me. And then we are off to a different kind of races after, which is the race of the court politics in the empress's and the emperor's main throne room area. And this is where just like all these scenes play out over like many pages, and we don't rush them. This was very similar to Shogun for me earlier this year, where like I know Zamar. Nico, have you read Shogun?
I have not yet. No.
Oh, okay. But me and Zamar
so
were reading
good.
it earlier this year. But like it reminded me this section of Shogun where you get these really intense conversational scenes where we are not rushing through. We're giving it space to really play out and get the conversation from different angles, and just a lot of subtext involved. And I was getting Shogun vibes in this court politics scene, which was really working for me. So yeah, what do we think of this section of the book here, where he's meeting the Empress and Emperor and Chancellor and all of them?
I was overall I was a little bit mixed here, like I was with most things. Shocker, I know, but I did some of the bits of it too with the politics I liked, and in other pieces I just wasn't the hugest fan. I am a little bit more with Heidi, where the female characters I didn't feel were as strong as they usually are in K novels. For me, and just kind of some of it, and I do get some of it is realistic, because like the Empress, based off of like the backstory of the Empress is based off, again, the real Empress in the Justinian times and everything too, and it's with her the same background, like that is historically accurate and everything. So they were really playing up on that though, which felt a little bit unrealistic. And like I said, I did feel like every woman who met Crispin, and I get to your guys' side too, but I felt like every woman he meets is just immediately like noting how attractive he is and everything, and that kind of thing as well. So wasn't the biggest fan, but I thought it was sort of interesting the way some of it played out, including some of the scenes with the other mosaicist, and I did like the little bit of the circle back to Teledicus that we got to. Some of those I did like, but I was a little bit mixed overall.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I agree with Heidi a little bit that those women are written pretty strongly in like to be like these seductress like manipulators, and who's to say that's not fully realistic? They might have existed that way. It didn't take me out of the story. It felt just organic to the situation for me. So it wasn't a big negative, if any, for me. But
So there's two women in particular that we're thinking of, right? Like there's the Empress and
Alexana and the Delena.
Delena,
yeah.
So like the Delena woman, I definitely got the seductress woman vibes off of her. But I didn't feel that way about the Empress. I thought that, okay, yes, like when she first meets Crispin, like her hair is down, like whatever. But I kind of felt like that was like showing that intimacy is a show of power in a way, like
yeah.
If that makes sense. But then I really like the Empress once she had interactions with the Emperor, and we see like their back and forth, and like their relationship to me was pretty compelling. Whether or not the characters were realistic, I don't know. I think like a character doesn't always have to be realistic to be compelling, right? Like that's the other part of it.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I found the where they preempted him, where he thinks he's going to deliver this really important secret message from the queen back in Batiara, and they preempt him.
Yeah, exactly.
Where
like
they know exactly what he came to say, and like that was so well done. Like, and
the way it was done was like she preempts it, right? She's like, so what did like Alexana, the Emperor's not even there, and she's like, so what did Queen Giselle want, right? Or what's she gonna? I don't remember exactly how she did it. What's she gonna give my husband for marrying her? Whatever. And Crispin's like, oh crap, she knows. And then in my head, I'm like, wait a second, she knows. So, but I guess the Emperor doesn't. But then he shows up and he knows as well. And you're like, oh man, there's like,
and I
like,
thought,
like those guys, like from the scene you saw before them, like that is a power couple, right? Like they're like this, like they're.
But I felt like some of Kay's genius was shining through here. There was a very subtle sense of fear on Alexana's part that like she
Yeah.
was gonna be cast aside
Replaced and,
in
yeah.
like a political power play,
Yeah.
and so like she's a little insecure with her position with
Mhm.
the Emperor, and then the Emperor seems to like try to reassure her towards the end of this book that like no one is gonna tear us apart. Like all these political games, like you're always gonna be, you know, the Empress. But like we don't know fully. Like even if he says that now, like is he gonna change? Like I could sense Alexandra's insecurity, and maybe she's trying to like preempt that a little by lashing out and pretending to be like overconfident. There are some really great nuances there with that with the Empress character that I thought Kay was just on like a genius level of like subtlety with.
Both of them like popped off the page for me in so many ways.
Well, and I was gonna say we'll back to the prologue to our first introduction to them versus when we see them again, kind of the contrast there. I think also does shine through really well, just because, you know, there's the time gap of like 15 years or whatever from the first time we're seeing, but it's like orchestrating this whole thing to now they're like they're very intelligent and they think about things, and it's not like, so you see two very different sides. Like the ruthlessness is there, but we're seeing a different side completely at that point too, which I thought was
really, and they seem to be a well-matched couple, like really both clever, like, you know, there's a physical chemistry that they have, like they're a real power couple in every sense of the word, and a force to be reckoned with. And so I'm definitely want more scenes with them going. I'm sure we will get some, but we leave
they seem very central.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
We leave the throne room for one of my favorite asides in the entire book. We get a new POV, a kitchen boy, Curios, who's stirring the sauce or the soup. He's given. I love that we get like we're in the kitchen with this famous chef, and we get the POV of this well-meaning kitchen boy. Just one of my favorite asides, and finally when the famous chef compliments him on the, was it the soup? What did he say? But at the very end, we get like he goes home, tells his mom. The mom is gossiping and telling everyone. He's like, the makings of a cook. Strumosis had said that. Like he's overjoyed that like Strumosis, the famous chef, like said he had the makings of a cook. Like this was like a mini short story here, and I was here for it. Like bring to life like the kitchen, where we're then gonna have this intense scene.
I mean, it was like integrated into the intense scene, right? Like you just had his POV, and I was like, why are we following this guy now? And and like Max says, the bear in Sarantium, it's kind of like that situation where his head chef is just this crazy guy who's yelling at everyone, and he's kind of scared. Everyone's like kind of scared of this guy, but everyone also loves his food. But then all of a sudden you have violence. And now a bunch of people come up, and this is before we know that like what's happened with Crispin and stuff. So like he did this like strange timeline shifting.
And then we go to see Scortius. We still don't know what's happening. Yeah. And we see him escaping from his late night dalliance. Yeah. And
who we don't know who that was with, right? Like we have no idea who he was dallying with.
I don't think so. And then he's like trying to escape. And he sees like the two guys in danger, and so he's like yelling and running, and then we think like they're in danger, but really it's like Corellis and the bodyguards, and so like there's this like false sense of security, but we know that there's going to be violence. Yeah. So like we know that something else is going to happen. They're attacked on the way, end up at the kitchen. Like the way Kay put the puzzle pieces of this sequence together, just like absolutely just fantastic for me.
It was very unorthodox, but I enjoyed it.
So there's this is for the record why I don't recommend audio with Kay very much, is this. He does this in Lions of Al-Rasan as well, and I feel like it's much easier to follow when he's doing the weird stuff if you're physically reading, which is where is why, even though I did do some audio on this one, because I just my physical reading time is limited, but I kind of I knew to look, but because the different scenes there, I do feel like they were a little bit more spread out, just because like it takes a little bit longer to converge than I was expecting there. I did also love the kitchen boy. My theory, I wonder if we're gonna have another time jump in the second book, and if that character is gonna show up again, even just briefly, as being like an important cook. Which I'm curious. I don't know if that's the case, but I do wonder, just because that was such a fun little thing in there. That's where I think when he does things like that, like shows the same scene through different ways or writes very ambiguously, sometimes it doesn't come across the best in audio. So that's where Kay is definitely somebody I prefer physical reading. Although I've done a little bit of audio for all this stuff, and I think it's still fine. You can be fine, but for me, my experience is a little bit better with physical for stuff like that.
Yep, I'm right with you. I do so much audio. Almost every book I read, I feel works just as well for me in audio, but not Kay. Like if I do audio for a Kay chapter, I almost inevitably want to go back and reread it in print just to make sure I got everything. It's not particularly like dense prose but it's just all the subtext and the way he jumps around from POVs. It helps in print.
I think so too.
Now we forgot to mention the other mosaicist in the throne room scene. I just want to mention that because this was so great, where like we know, because we'd seen this guy go to quiz Kasha, like what's kind of what the stakes are for this question, but Crispin doesn't know that when they ask him about like this double reverse tesseract method of mosaic, like he doesn't know that he's about to just like completely demolish this other guy and make an enemy. I thought that the assassins were sent by him, but interestingly by Teledicus right at the end. That was a nice little plot twist.
Was that 100% convinced, or sorry, confirmed?
I think so. I
wasn't sure if it was just implied that everyone thought it was Teledicus, but we don't know for sure. Or
it's not completely opaque, but it seems I feel definitely Teledicus definitely did, but also there's a little bit of an implication that he might not have been the only one. There's several mentions of like, it's real easy to hire soldiers to go kill somebody in Sarantium. So it's mentioned enough times that I'm like, was he the only one? And I think it gives that implication that maybe not. So for me, I feel like there were multiple parties, but I definitely feel like Teledicus was one of them, especially with the way that it circles back to him.
Because that was a very determined assassin. Like he really wanted Crispin dead, And like I don't know if Teledicus had that much motivation for it. I don't know.
But the stuff with the mosaic at the end, like I loved it when he was like describing the why that method was not good, and then when he was also like putting forth his idea for the dome, and then like the idea for it and involved like a sunset and the forest scenes with animals and like a bison that people will think were a cow, like all the little details involved in this in the art related stuff were just hitting for me. Just classic GGK.
Yeah, and like the light playing across, taking that into account. And whatnot. There's I gotta have to find it, put it in Discord, because there's a perfect meme for this. I'll have to create. I wish it would have been done ahead of time.
And let's see, is anything else right at the end?
You had Zodicus' daughter.
Oh, she emerges as a character. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Shireen, I think.
Yeah. And I love that interaction because Crispin can hear the bird, and Shireen doesn't think, of course, anyone else can hear, and so like that was a fun. Okay, Nico, you're right. That actually, this might be the actual time where a woman first meets Crispin and is like very attracted to him. Like that, and it's not like
that would be another one. Yeah, it was.
I mean, okay, guys, it seemed gimmicky
as well.
Like, okay, no, he opens the door and she jumps on him and starts kissing him, right? Like that's essentially what happened.
Yeah.
right? Which seemed gimmicky, but I don't think after that she was attracted.
But I think the bird was who has access to her thoughts. Like, I think was implying that she was acting like a little bit love struck in
Really?
that whole interaction. Like, I got the sense that like Sharon had a bit of a instant crush on Crispin. So
Okay.
I'll hand Nico that one. I did get the sense for that. Was also, you know what, that doesn't typically bother me. Like, you know, so that whether it's so realistic or you know, like certain guy, like Crispin is an intense guy, and you know, it could make sense that he could be attracting women pretty quickly. So it didn't throw me out, and that's my main criterion for if I have an issue with something. Like Nico was already noticing it, and so like it was cumulative, and so like when it happens again, like that's happened to me in books where I'm noticing something in the prose or like a plot device or something, and if I'm on the lookout for them and then it comes up, like it is gonna annoy me greatly.
So the thing I was talking about is like somebody else thinks they can do a mosaic, and then Crispin comes in. It's the copy pasta. You fool! You absolute buffoon! You think you can challenge me in my own realm? It just like goes off from there, and that's kind of what it makes me think of every time, because he's just like schooling everybody.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think I got that vibe from the Sharon interaction, but I might have missed something. I'm not sure.
She definitely kissed him at first just to get rid of the other guy, but then like the bird's dialogue, I felt like the bird was picking up on Sharon like acting different around Crispin than she normally does, and then like Sharon was internally arguing with the bird, like stop it, like shut up, like I don't know, I just got the sense.
I think I see what you mean.
And it was that scene after all the other scenes that just added to me, because the bird is making it very clear that she's thinking about him and very attracted to him, and you know, daydreaming about him and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, but here's the thing, Nico. Like, don't you want some wish fulfillment? Like, is it just me?
Yes,
like, I would love it if girls were daydreaming about me all the time. Like, that would be great.
Yeah, like the famous dancer in the city, renowned beauty.
It's one of those things that like it can be done, and I think and work, but it's hard to pull off and have it not just feel kind of like tacky to me. And again, like I'm not trying to say this is the worst thing in the world. I've read plenty of other authors who have absolutely done the kind of stuff too, you know, and I've still enjoyed it. It didn't ruin this for me either, but it felt like when it just every interaction that he has with a woman, whether there's a reason for it or not, every single action, it just seems like every woman wants it to jump his bones or flirt with him or whatnot. It just like, I'm like, come on, okay, really, really.
I can feel
it just
you on that.
It just kind of built for me where I was a little peeved.
You see, in my head, it just adds to the legend of Crispin. It's like, this is maybe the hottest guy that ever lived, and like, that's awesome.
I love your interpretation though too.
And, Mac coming in with some real life lore about Sharon. This ending took me by surprise when we went back to Batiara, and I think Giselle is about to get murdered, and then there's this bait and switch. We learned she had escaped with the help of Zodicus, and that was all really cool and well done, and like bringing back that what I thought was an interesting side character from the beginning, Giselle. You know, having her then kind of converge on Sarantium for the next book, I thought would be a cool thing for book 2. And that was just like being with Zodicus too. Like Zodicus character at the end like had more weight than I was expecting, and kind of going on his mission to back to the tree clearing.
Did you expect the bait and switch with the queen?
No, I thought she was done for in that moment. And
I was trying to pull up. I think it worked well, but it's like and Ben, I don't know if since you have the book in front of you, but like the way that very last bit where that was written with her sailing off, I absolutely loved the way that was done, and that was for me like it was open ended, but it was such a good way to end as well. But yeah, going back to Zodicus, that's where I felt like I really would have liked more throughout because I really liked him at the beginning, and the ending with him I thought was really good. Although that does also play into, I don't know if you guys read the poem that this is based off of, because
No.
I was talking to Joanna, and she's much more into poetry than I am. But if you look at the poem, you can see a lot of parallels, many of which I will admit she had to point out to me because I am not very well versed in poetry. But it's the poem I think does specifically go in. It's almost, if you really look at it, almost has spoilers.
Wow.
I thought it was interesting. But
who wrote the poem?
It's William Butler Yeats.
Oh, okay.
It's I can link you guys to it. But it starts with, because it's called Sailing to Byzantium. It starts with, that is no country for old men, the young in another's arms, birds in the trees. And then in the second stanza, it has, an aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, which the ending of the book, we just have the tattered cloak and the stick and everything. So there's actually, it's really interesting. I'm not much of a poetry guy, but I think it's definitely interesting to check out and just kind of read and see the way that it kind of connects.
That's interesting. Yeah, I had no idea this was based on a poem.
I do have the last bit of Giselle's POV on the boat, and she's thinking about how sad she is about like her bodyguard having sacrificed himself, and she had not been, it seemed, born into the world for peace or joy or any sure power, or even to keep those very few who loved her by her side. And then it has a bit of a paragraph about her sailing east, leaving behind the only land she had ever known for the seas of late autumn and the world, sailing east. Oh, that's a long sentence. That's like a whole paragraph of a sentence. I just gave you.
Yeah, you don't have to read the whole thing. I mean, that gives you the feel. It just and the fact that she's actually sailing to Sarantium too, which was thematically, they talk a lot in the book about what the phrase "sailing to Sarantium" means. But then we literally have her sailing to Sarantium after we've been exploring that phrase the whole time. It's just really, really beautiful, and I really, really enjoyed that part for sure.
Yeah. No, it was a great way to end the book for sure.
And the very end, though, it was like I was like, oh, GGK, like you left me on a bit of a cliffhanger, because Crispin's up on the scaffold, like thinking about his mosaic.
Yeah.
And then he hears like a woman come in, and like I forget what they even say, but we don't know like who came to see him. He drew a breath and stepped down off the scaffolding. She smiled. Like that's just DGK being a bit of a rogue with a cliffhanger.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Who do we think that is? That could be. I thought that might have been Giselle coming to see him again. But I don't know if that was too quick. That's too quick for her to arrive there.
He likes to play with how much time has passed. So, I mean, it really could be.
Did anyone think about who that was? She smiled.
I'm gonna put my money on Giselle, I think, because
I didn't think about it a ton.
Nico was like, "Oh, thank God, I'm done."
No, I really liked the other aspects, and so like with Giselle sailing and with Zodicus at the end, I really liked those. So I saw that, and I'm just like, I don't know, my brain didn't latch onto that as much. Like I know exactly what you guys are talking about, but I'm like, oh, you know, I'll see with these other parts. Those are the parts that my brain really latched onto.
So.
And I think I was thinking more about the actual mosaic itself, because I'm very curious about that and how he made the sketch and he showed it to people, and there's some uncertainty about things. And,
I think though, I think in my head it was the Empress, Alexana, coming in and like approving of it because she had had the conversations about the arts.
Yeah.
I think I do love that detail, by the way. That seems so fitting reading it on a ferry. Love it.
It's great, Rogue. All right, so we've reached. I did also love the part at the end of the Mosaic where he's imagining what he's gonna do on the dome, and
Yeah.
it's just like this grand artistic vision that's encompassing like his journey with that he took to get there, and some slightly heretical, religious stuff, and he wants to leave something lasting and make his mark on the world. Like all that I thought was just so good throughout the book with the art stuff with Crispin. So like, yeah, Crispin's such a cool character. This like hot-headed character, but who has this really sensitive artistic side as well, and sensitive side with how he interacts with with certain people that he comes to like, and so he's just a really interesting, multifaceted character that I'm enjoying following.
Yeah, 100% agree. I really like him.
Needed props for the end.
Oh, what do you got? What do you got there?
Oh, I was just gonna say if you liked that, then check out this. The book that I kept comparing this in my head to, 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City by KJ Parker.
I've actually read one.
So I don't know if you know, but for me, I just kept thinking about the two because also takes place with kind of the Roman, also has the blues and the greens, involves kind of the cocky, hot character who's, in the court politics they're not used to, but trying to figure it out, that kind of thing. So character-wise, I felt like this ended up Orhan and Crispin fit a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
With it
I
as
could
well.
see that. That did not occur to me. I've read this a bunch of years ago and liked it, and it to me felt like overall the vibe and tone was more satirical.
Yes, definitely.
And so that might be why I didn't compare them. But now that you're talking about like the setting, the actual characters, like, oh yeah, very very reminiscent in certain ways.
Yeah, and that's where I read it a bit more recently, so it might have been to mind. And then otherwise, the other thing that it reminded me of a bit, Heliotrope by Palmer Pickering, which deals with mosaics a bit, like ground ones. And this is one where like the beginning and the ending I really liked. It dragged a little bit for me in the middle. It's the prose is a lot more on the simple side than like the Guy Gavriel Kay style, but the looks at art and like talking about the different stones and kind of thing I thought were really interesting, and that plays into the magic in this one a lot too, because this one does definitely have more fantastical elements, but you can see somewhat Roman theme on the cover there as well too. So those are the two things that came to mind for me with this one.
Oh, nice. Is that a standalone?
Yeah, it's a standalone.
Ooh. Oh, nice. That's been on my radar. That looks like a chunky boy.
Yeah, it's a big one. That's where like I do like my long books. This one was a little long for me. I felt like some could have been cut, but I overall I really liked the beginning and the end a lot, and so I still had a really good time with it.
I don't know why I was expecting Lord of Emperors to be much bigger than Sailing to Sarantium, but it's only like a little bit bigger, and it looks like it's only like a couple hours more in the audiobook, so it's actually been divided up almost in half. But
I'll be really interested to see what we do in the book too.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
All right, any final thoughts for us? I think overall this nicely met my expectations for Sailing to Sarantium, and people talk about just like Lord of Emperors being like one of their favorite books, one of their favorite GGK ones. So I was expecting it to be kind of set up. So it met my expectations, but exceeded them on standing alone better than I had thought. And I just can't imagine at this point Kay misfiring for me, because I connect to his writing style and the way he does characters and his ethos and just I can't wait to go through all of this, but I want to savor them. I've already gotten through like a bunch of his like really celebrated stuff, and I'm like, oh no, I'm kind of running out. Like there's not that many more like historical fantasy ones. Like there's the alternate China ones, there's 2 of those, and then there's a couple like set near the time of brightness long ago, but a Viking one. But there's not like that many, so we gotta treasure these.
Yeah, true. I very much have managed expectations for book 2, but again, I mean, I'm the one coming in like, oh, I found this disappointing. I've been raving with stuff right along with you guys, so that's where it's still a good book, and it's like this is the kind of thing where I'm rating it against other K books, and that's why it suffers because So an author has to be really good to have that kind of impact. Where it's just like, even a little bit of a down book, but I did, like I said, there's a lot that I enjoyed here, so I'm still very, very interested in the second book.
Yeah, for sure. No, I like this one a lot. I'm all in on the GGK train. It's just a matter of what order I read the rest of the books in.
Yeah.
I own. These are like the only 2 books I don't own, just for the record, which is why it was rude for you to invite me to this buddy read, even though I was down for it. But I have almost every book he's ever written except for these 2 for some reason. So,
yeah, I was so confident that I would click with GGK that I've been amassing all of his books before I ever tried him,
same.
And
for years.
Yeah, and that ended up working out better than I could have expected. But like, I was getting paperbacks. And I didn't realize how much I would love them. So like after I love Song for a Bone, I had to go on eBay and look for a nice hardcover.
It's the hardcovers are not the easiest to track down because I really want hardcovers as well, especially like for Lions and Song for a Bone. I have the paperbacks, and I really would like a hardcover,
but this is like considered some of his great works, the Sarantine Mosaic. So I'm very happy to be able to go through it with you all and enrich my read. So thank you both for joining me and for so patiently going through the book over the course of almost 2 hours. Sorry if I had us going too long there, but
no
worries at all.
An absolute pleasure, and it was a lot of fun to just buddy read this and go through the Discord. We had a bunch of people reading with us. Zara was there, Jorge was there, and I thought it was a lot of fun just sharing thoughts. So I'm excited for the Lord of the Emperors read whenever that happens.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to get right back into this. So I'm probably gonna dive in soon, like maybe my next read after I finish the Way of Edan soon. So
nice.
Yeah, I'm eager to keep it going. But thanks, Nico and Zamar and everyone in the chat. Rogue, Miss Garfield, Heidi have been here for a long time. Thanks for all the great comments, and for everyone else watching along. Hope you enjoyed the book chat, and we'll see you next time with Lord of Emperors. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.